You want to learn how to break out of your shell. Maybe you feel like part of you can show to the world, but then the rest of you, the world doesn't get to see. And that's why you're shy. And you want to learn how to get out of your shell and how to let the world see all of your personality. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Because for me, for years in my lower school, middle school, even high school years, I was extremely shy. It was really hard for me to open up and to be comfortable around people. And I found that there was like a narrow group of people I tended to gravitate to, and then everyone else I was really uncomfortable around. And it took me conscious effort and growth to break out of that. And so I'm gonna shortcut the learning curve for you. I'm gonna give you 3 strategies in this video that will help you get outside of your shyness. Strategy number 1 is to expand your social comfort zone. Your social comfort zone is comprised of 2 elements. You have your peer group, or the people that you associate with, and you have your environments that you put yourself into. If you put them both together, you have your total social comfort zone. Right now, I would guesstimate it's probably about this big. There's a small amount of people that you feel comfortable with, and there's a small amount of activities or environments that you feel comfortable putting yourself into. The reason shyness shows up is as a defense mechanism. When you're outside of that comfort zone, now you're not sure how people are going to interpret you, if they're going to accept you, if they're going to accept all of your personality. And so what does that lead to? That leads to you tending to hold back. Now here's how to correct that. Focus on one or both of these areas. Start intentionally expanding it. Now, if you really want to grow, and if you want to grow fast like I did, expose yourself to radically different people and radically different environments than you were before. This will guarantee that you grow and you become less shy. But if that's too daunting for you, just start strategically. Look at your group of friends, look at who you tend to associate with, or at the very least, who you tend to communicate with, and gradually expand out of that comfort zone. Hang out with people that are slightly different and slightly different. And just by being intentional with this, you'll start to put yourself into different situations. And the same thing with your environments and your activities. If you have a very rigid set of activities and hobbies that you always stick to, look to change it up in subtle ways. Try a different routine, drive a different way, walk a different way, sign up for different activities, do anything that will get you outside of that social comfort zone and start to expand what is possible for you. And then what will happen is when you start meeting people that are outside of your comfort zone, it's easier for you to find what you have in common. And that's ultimately what will have you kick out of your shyness. Strategy number 2 is to initiate more. This will train your mind to set the tone for when you meet people. Because when you first meet that person, there's 3 ways that you can initiate a connection with them. The first way is by simply introducing yourself. The second way is by asking the first question. And the third way is to offer the first amount of vulnerability. So here's what I mean. If you can intentionally begin thinking, how can I introduce myself first? All right? How can I be the person that initiates that connection? Let's say you're at a party, let's say you're at a networking event, let's say you're out and about and you're meeting people. How do you be the person that initiates that contact first? Be that person. One of the things that helped me the most was I used to go to events about once or twice a month. They usually last about like a weekend. There were different topics like business and self-development and personal growth, sometimes spirituality. And while I'm at these events, I set a goal, I set a target every time. I'm going to walk up and introduce myself to 50 to 60 people. And this was daunting at first, but what I found was that my body and my mind started getting used to just initiating that connection. And you might be thinking like, man, that sounds scary as hell. How am I gonna meet that many people? How am I gonna put myself out there that much? The way that this worked for me was I realized early on that very, very, very few people ever rejected me. The worst thing that could happen is about a minute into the conversation, realize there's no connection there and it was no big deal. And so this allowed me to get the courage to just go keep walking up to people. And so by me initiating it, my shyness was largely overcome. But then the second part of this is that once you're in that conversation, ask the first question. Okay, by you asking the first question, you now take the lead in the conversation. So now you are being the person that is offering value by starting to steer the direction of the conversation. And this is useful because when you're shy, you tend to be more passive. This puts you more in the driver's seat. And the final way, this is the hardest approach, and it's where a lot of people struggle, is to be vulnerable first. And what I mean by that is not to open up your whole life story on a person, but just to share one little thing about what's important to you, or about what matters to you in your life, or about what you're up to. And sharing that little bit of vulnerability now opens a doorway for a connection, and they will take your lead with that. And now you both are opening up. The third strategy for breaking out of your shell is to heal what you hate. Self-judgment of any kind is going to wreck your ability to overcome shyness. And the reason why is because you can't really truly accurately see what's going on in you when you have a high amount of self-judgment. If you feel like you hate yourself, if you feel like you're really down on yourself, you can't clearly see you. There's no amount of self-awareness because it's clouded by all that hatred. So first of all, confront what you feel like is your inner monster, the part of you that you do not want the public to see, the part of you that you're most ashamed about. Bring them out and confront them. Not we're going to attack them, but we're going to confront them. You're going to look them in the eye and really face down, what am I most ashamed of in people seeing in me? And this can be emotionally liberating for you. One of the best things that I ever did was I confronted that part of me, and I literally wrote him a letter. I wrote about how ashamed I was of him and how I felt like the world couldn't see this side of me, how I always felt awkward in this particular way, and I was afraid of what people would interpret when they saw this part of me. And then after that letter, I then flipped it around and wrote about how much I love that part of me. And it was difficult because it's like staring into the sun. You know, we're not used to giving ourselves that amount of love. But if you can do that, if you can just give that part of you that you don't want to show the world love and attention, what happens is your self-connection starts to grow and that shyness starts to resolve itself on its own. Because how you interact with other people is really just a mirror for how you interact with yourself. So by expanding that relationship with self, you will expand your relationship with the world. And I found having that confrontation and that direct communication did the most work out of everything we've talked about. This was the key strategy for me to break out of my shell and to stop looking at these different fragments of my personality as things that I hated about myself. And instead, it could be something that I would eventually tolerate and then finally embrace. So there you have it, 3 strategies for breaking out of your shell. Stay tuned for the next video. I will see you there. Have a good one.